Howdy, Austin, Texas. Y'all about ready to go out and win an election? Before we talk about elections, I got to talk about something else. First, I want to give it up for the fabulous First Lady of Texas. As everybody knows, today is Valentine's Day. Today is Sweetheart Day. We have some fabulous music to go along with it, it sounds like. But what you may not know, and that is it was on this day, back in 1981, on the Riverwalk in San Antonio, Texas, when I asked Cecilia to marry me. And so this is not only Valentine's Day, this is engagement day for the Abbott family. Thank you, Cecilia. I appreciate your love and devotion. Listen, I want to thank everybody for being here. We're ready for an election, but it turns out I am not the only person on the ballot in the room today, because also we have in the room today somebody that I appointed to the Texas Supreme Court who's on the ballot. He clerked for Justice Scalia on the United States Supreme Court and went on to become a prolific lawyer. He's an outstanding justice on the Texas Supreme Court, and that is Evan Young on the Texas Supreme Court. Evan, thank you for being here. Good luck to you also. But listen, we're here because today, the first day of early voting, we are ready to do what needs to be done to keep Texas red. We need to understand not everyone sees it that way. Did you all see what happened over the course of the past weekend on Saturday, of all things? The person who came to Texas, who was campaigning in San Antonio for Democrat candidates, was none other than Ocasio-Cortez. And exactly. And so she was talking about the need to show the public what Democrats stand for. And we know exactly what they stand for. They stand for these radical leftist policies like the Green New Deal. Listen, we live in the great state of Texas, the state that's number one in production of oil and gas and provides millions of jobs in the energy sector, and we are not going to allow these radical leftists to destroy those high-paying energy jobs for more than 1 million Texans. I am running for re-election to protect our energy jobs in the great state of Texas. And this it's not just energy jobs. If you look at the job sector across the board, Texas is number one in so many categories. Ever since I've been governor, Texas has been ranked the number one state in America as the best state for doing business. The number one state in America for the most new economic development projects. The number one state in America for the best state to start a small business. When you add all these things together, Texas has now climbed internationally to having the ninth largest economy in the entire world. More importantly, however, what this means for our fellow Texans as we gather here today on the first day of voting in this election in 2022, more Texans have a job than ever before in the history of our state. Texas is a great state for employment. But let's go back to these radical agenda items by the leftist Democrats who are trying to win in the state of Texas. They promote things like critical race theory in our schools, trying to redesign the past and redesign the future of our country, and we are not tolerating it. During this past session, we passed not one, but two laws banning critical race theory. We've now banned critical race theory in every subject, in every grade, in every public school in the entire state of Texas. And I wish it ended there, but if you look at these radical leftist policies that people like Beto has stand for and that people like Ocasio-Cortez has been pushing, and that is something that's extraordinarily dangerous in our communities, and that is defunding the police. You've seen the consequences of this across the entire country, whether it be in Los Angeles or San Francisco or New York or Chicago. And I hate to say it, in Texas, there's always one city. Always one city. And unfortunately, that city is the city of Austin, Texas. Even Austin, Texas defunded the police. And whenever you see this happen, it leads to one thing, and that is more crime. The same happened in Austin, Texas. What happened in Austin, Texas was extremely predictable. They defunded the police, and this past year, they set an all-time record for the most number of murders. We as Republicans, and I as your governor, said not under my watch will I allow police to be defunded in Texas. In Texas, we support our law enforcement officers, period. And that's exactly why I campaigned on and I signed a law that will defund any city, including Austin, that defunds our police. So we will fully fund our law enforcement officers in Texas. I am running for re-election to make sure that no radical leftist will ever come in and impose a policy that would defund police in our state. But listen, as crazy and radical and dangerous as it is to defund the police, I think we've all come to realize there's another radical leftist agenda item that Biden has imposed, that Beto has embraced, and as well as Ocasio-Cortez, that is even more dangerous to our state and to our country. And that is the open border policies imposed by the Biden administration and supported by Beto O'Rourke himself. We've seen the catastrophe here. You know, Trump had this fixed. He did 4 things to secure the border. 1 is to impose remain in Mexico. 2 is Title 42. 3 is to end catch and release. And 4 is to build a border wall. And all of that led to the lowest number of illegal border crossings in decades. And Biden came in and eliminated all of those items, and now we have the highest number of border crossings maybe ever. There were, this past year, almost 2 million people who came across the border illegally from more than 150 different countries, including countries connected to terrorist-based nations. The President of the United States has an obligation to ensure that he secures our country from potential terroristic dangers, and President Biden and open border policies has failed at that effort. Well, Texas is not settling idly by because we have stepped up and done more than any state in the history of this entire country to secure our border. We provided well over $3 billion to make sure that we would be able to do what needs to be done to secure our border, including adding about 10,000 National Guard troops who are bravely stepping up and standing watch on our border, in addition to more than 1,000 DPS officers to make sure that our border is secured. We also are working to arrest and jail people who are coming across the border illegally. And Texas is stepping up, and we are building our own border wall to secure our state. But listen, it's more than just public safety that's on the ballot. Freedom itself is on the ballot this election. You know, when you think of freedom, you think about your First Amendment rights and Second Amendment rights, those that are contained in the Constitution. As I have stepped up and protected your constitutional rights, while at the very same time, people like Beto O'Rourke have been working to take away and erode your constitutional rights. Beto actually came out and said that he wanted to eliminate the tax-exempt status of churches that refuse to bow down to the woke leftist agenda. I will not let that happen in the great state of Texas. To the contrary, I signed a law to ensure that no government official at any level would ever be able to close down our churches and to deny you the ability to go worship God Almighty in the Lone Star State. And you all know what comes after the First Amendment. The Second Amendment. And you know exactly what Robert Francis O'Rourke said, and that is, he said, hell yes, he's going to come and take your guns. When he was running for president, now that he's running for governor, he realized, man, that doesn't sell well in Texas. And now he's saying, oh, I didn't mean that. I support your Second Amendment rights. What a liar. That's just unbelievable. Well, we don't have to worry about whatever Beto said because I have signed more than 20 laws protecting your Second Amendment rights in Texas. Listen, as everybody is getting ready to go cast your vote, what you must do, I just want to leave you with this one final message. And that is, there has never been a year where the difference, policy-wise, between candidates on the ballot has been as extreme as they are this year. We're not talking about different shades of gray. We're talking about cataclysmic differences. And it is essential for first that you understand that there are people who are not like you. You love America, and you love the great state of Texas. There are people on the ballot who want to redesign the United States of America and redesign the great state of Texas, and we are not going to let that happen. We are going to win. We are going to crush these leftist, radical agenda Democrats, and we are going to keep Texas the best state and the greatest country in the history of the world. God bless you all, and God bless the great state of Texas. Few questions.
I'd like to know an obvious question, but what's the motive here? Is the cartel trying to kill Americans? Are they trying to get money, votes?
So we're a little bit mystified by that. One is they want to try to continue to hook their customers on this drug. If the drug is used in such a slight way, the person taking it will survive. But it is kind of ironic that the drug cartels are selling a product to their customer where they will lose their customer. That said, that mimics other approaches by the cartels. The cartels could care less. The main way the cartels are making money right now is through human smuggling. They don't care about the fact that many of the people they're smuggling die on the pathway to getting to the border, die as they're crossing the border, or die after they cross the border. The cartels could care less about the human smuggling and human trafficking and human slavery that they put these people into. The cartels are not humanitarian whatsoever. And so it just fits a pattern with them that they're in it just to make money. And this past year, there have been reports that the cartels made a record amount of money this past year.
Governor, you spoke a little bit about potentially putting Narcan in schools on top of every law enforcement official having it on their person. Can you describe a little bit more what that could potentially look like? Would it be just in the nurse's office at the schools? Would it be in every classroom, on every teacher? What would you like to see if we needed to take that step for the state?
Well, so the first thing we need to do is we need to utilize the new chief of school safety working for the state of Texas. His name is John Scott. Have him identify the extent to which fentanyl is appearing in our schools. The reality is it may be appearing in some schools and not in other schools. There's no reason to have Narcan in a region where it may not exist. If, however, it does exist in any school, we want to make sure that they have sufficient Narcan to be able to treat the students there. And you would think that a single location such as a nurse's office would be the safest and best location for something like that. However, we would leave it to the safety professionals at each school to make that determination.
Governor, could you touch a little bit on the goals of the Friday Night Lights Against Opioids Center?
Well, we want to expose to the public and inform the public about what's going on concerning opioids, opioid abuse, what opioids can do to literally kill people. And we want to save lives is the bottom line by sending the message to parents, to families, to kids about the dangers of opioids and the necessity of avoiding them.
Any more questions?
Governor, earlier this year, the More Narcan Please program throughout the state had to stop taking requests for Narcan from different groups around the state because it ran out of funding. How do you plan to expand Narcan when these groups are already losing out on funding right now?
Sure. So when we start a session, we will have funding available that we can figure out the right pathway to provide the funding, but I think we can all agree on the necessity of making sure the Narcan is there. We have several funding paths. Texas has the beneficiary of having such a robust economy. Candidly, Texas has the #1 economy in the United States of America right now. And a byproduct of that is that we have a budget surplus of $27 billion. And we can squeeze out of that money to provide Narcan. Also, the governor's office has criminal justice grants that may have the possibility of providing funding for Narcan. One way or the other, we'll find the resources to make sure that we're saving the lives of innocent people.
Last question.
The cartels are designated to be terrorist organizations. How will this fight in the battle against fentanyl?
By designating cartels as terrorist organizations, it empowers law enforcement to be more aggressive about going after all the assets and resources of the cartels that exist in the state of Texas, whether it be bank accounts, homes, boats, vehicles, whatever the case may be. And our job is to put them out of business. Cartels need to understand if they are doing business in the state of Texas, every dime that they're making, every location that may be hidden, we will uncover it, we will root it out, and we will seize it, and we will put them out of business. If cartels do business in the state of Texas, they picked the wrong state to do business in.
Great, thank you guys.
Before. It is not humane what is taking place on the border today. It is not humane when we see images like what happened in Del Rio, Texas, under the bridge. What is humane is when people like the governor are willing to step up to the plate and recognize that what made this country great is law and order. What made this country the free country that we are today is the rule of law that we have in this country. And Governor Abbott has been working extremely hard to make that happen. If it wasn't for his willingness to put his constituents, the citizens of the great state of Texas, if it wasn't for that willingness to put them in the forefront of everything that he does, we would not support him. But because of all of the efforts that he's had, DPS being on the border, what we saw in Rio Grande City, the drugs, the tens of thousands of people that are being killed every single year, if it wasn't for his efforts to plug the holes that are left because the federal government refuses to enact the policies that are necessary, if it wasn't for those efforts, we would have thousands of more people undoubtedly would be dead today if it wasn't for those efforts. He puts his constituents first. He puts what's necessary for Texas first. He's doing what the federal government has refused to do, and for that we are extremely grateful. For those reasons, I'm very proud to announce that we are endorsing Governor Abbott in his re-election bid for the governor of the great state of Texas. Governor Abbott, thank you.
Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Paul, and thank you to these members of the National Border Patrol Council. Knowing that the chaos and crisis at the border caused by the Biden administration's open border policies makes the border one of the most important issues facing the state of Texas at this time. It means a lot to me that the men and women of the National Border Patrol Council are supporting me in my re-election campaign. It is essential that we as a state and we as a country step up and do the job required by the United States Congress of enforcing the immigration laws and maintaining the sovereignty of our country and our state by securing the border. To have the support of the men and women who are at the tip of the spear of securing our border means everything to me and my campaign. I do want to express my gratitude, but also, candidly, the gratitude of most people in the state of Texas and most people in the United States for the job that these men and women in the Border Patrol do every single day to do all they can to secure our border, despite, under the current administration, in my opinion, having one hand tied behind the back as they're trying to do their job. First of all, Brandon, thank you for the endorsement. But also thank you for the job you all do every day. Because of the Biden administration's failure and refusal to secure the border the way that it should be secured because of the open border policies and the chaos that it has stoked, Texas has had to step up and take unprecedented action to make sure that we as a state are working collaboratively with the Border Patrol to secure our border. And that includes the state of Texas using $3 billion of Texas taxpayer funding for Texas to work to assist to secure the border. That includes also 15 laws that I signed just this past session to crack down on the heinous crime of human trafficking. You heard Brandon talk about it earlier. We got human trafficking, we have drug smuggling. We must end the exploitation of children and women who are being exploited as they make their way to and across our international border. But in addition to signing those laws and the budget that we have, I have deployed both the Texas National Guard as well as the Texas Department of Public Safety to secure the border, to arrest criminals and drug cartel members, as well as to crack down on the smuggling of the deadly, dangerous drug fentanyl that is pouring into our country, killing thousands upon thousands of Texans and Americans. And now Texas is building its own border wall to better secure our border. So Texas will continue to step up where the Biden administration has failed to do its job. And Texas will continue to work in collaboration with the men and women of the Border Patrol to make sure that we are doing all we can to fulfill our commitment to America to keep our border secure. We'll take a few questions.
Governor, do you feel like you'll be able to win over moderate Republicans who want maybe legalization of marijuana or stricter gun control? What do you think?
So our goal is to make the case that I am the governor for all Texans. And that means ensuring that we have the policies that we can advance that will improve the lives of everybody. Some of that means dealing with general topics such as securing the border and providing for safer communities. But remember this, and that is for possession of marijuana, it is now a Class C misdemeanor in the state of Texas. And so one thing that I believe in, and I believe the state legislature believes in, and that is prison and jail is a place for dangerous criminals who may harm others. And small possession of marijuana is not the type of violation that we want to stockpile jails with. And so we have been making steps in that regard. Yes?
Texas has a long border, lots of places you can make this announcement. Why'd you know it?
We've been here repeatedly, and we do have a large border. We have a border where there have been multiple crossings. Everybody's familiar with the Haitians that took place in Del Rio. That said, in this particular region, we're dealing with a mass number of crossings every single day. The Texas National Guard, as well as the Texas Department of Public Safety, they have a profound presence in this area. Texas, even though we have increasing crossings in other regions that Texas is having to address, as well as the Border Patrol is having to address, this still is a hot zone that we must continue to focus on.
One more question.
Yes.
Governor, of course, this endorsement is a very good thing for your campaign, but this is a special group that has been struggling the last years or so with the crisis in the border, with vaccine mandates, risking their jobs. How are you going to respond to this struggle for Border Patrol?
So the Border Patrol, in my opinion, has struggled, and again, I'm just speaking for my opinion, because I believe that the President of the United States has not provided them with the resources they need, the amount of personnel they need, and haven't freed them to actually do their job of what they really need to be doing. And so we are working to assist them any way we can so that they can focus on doing the job that they were meant to do. You mentioned some other things, however. You mentioned the vaccine mandate. And so I have sent a clear and loud message to men and women of the Border Patrol. If any of them ever loses their job, because they do not want to comply with a vaccine mandate by the Biden administration, I, as governor of Texas, would be proud to hire them to assist Texas, for Texas to secure the border. Whatever challenges they may face, these are men and women who are literally sacrificing their lives for the safety of others. And we as a state want to support them, and we will step up and assist them any way that we can.
Thank you.
Thank you guys again.
Well as of this state, and to keep our state secure. And they are putting their lives on the line every single day to ensure the safety of their communities. Most of the people with us here today are sheriffs. In addition to that, there are some police officers, and they collectively are all a part of the process of securing their communities from the overwhelming number of people and drugs and contraband that is coming across the border. A lot of people think that something that may come across the border is going to be dealt with at the border. And in some, and maybe many cases, it is. But the fact of the matter is, border challenges come up to Nueces County, to other counties across the entire state of Texas. Every sheriff in Texas is a border sheriff because of the open border policies allowed by the Biden administration. And I want to thank them for what they do, and I want to thank them for their support. This is a bipartisan group of law enforcement officials who put service to our community and enforcement of the law above everything else. There will be several talking here shortly. They include sheriffs from across a very vast region, including the Texas Sheriff's Regional Alliance, Texas Border Sheriffs Coalition, and Operation Lone Star Task Force. And we have some police chiefs as well as commanders of task force operations. Again, what they are dealing with are the consequences because of Joe Biden's open border policies. They are the people on the front lines dealing with problems every day, such as human smugglers, cartel gang members, fentanyl, which is on the rise. Thousands of people have crossed the border, some of whom have previously been convicted of dangerous crimes. They're dealing with their constituents whose ranches have been ripped apart, homes invaded. And one of the sheriffs here today is having to ask for morgues because of the number of dead bodies that he has in his county. And they're constantly having to respond to fear by their constituents. Remember this, it was just 2.5 years ago. We had the fewest illegal border crossings in decades. And that's because of 4 measures that were put into place, and that is Remain in Mexico, the Title 42 policy, the end of catch and release, and building a border wall. Now, just 2.5 years later, under President Biden, we, this past fiscal year, had the most illegal border crossings ever. More than 2.2 million people have come across the border because the Biden administration is not enforcing the rule of law on the border. Well, Texas has done more than any state in the history of America to respond to this challenge. We're the only state to ever build our own border wall. We have the National Guard on the border that are involved in turning back people who are trying to cross the border illegally. People who make it past them encounter the Texas Department of Public Safety, who arrest people who cross the border. And they will arrest them and jail them, or arrest them and return them to the border. To show you why this matters so much, just take, for example, a story from last week when DPS arrested a man from Honduras. And after they arrested him and processed him, they realized there was a warrant out for his arrest for murder. He was wanted for murder. And had DPS not been there to arrest him, he would have been let loose, passing Border Patrol, wandering around Texas or the United States, posing imminent danger to Texans and Americans. And then there's the fentanyl. Fentanyl that's crossing the border at unprecedented amounts. And there's a very easy explanation why. Because most Border Patrol are actually not patrolling the border. Most Border Patrol are filling out the paperwork of all the migrants that the Biden administration is allowing in. and because they're preoccupied filling out paperwork that leaves open wide gaps that cartels are able to bring fentanyl across the border in record amounts. Just Texas DPS alone has seized enough fentanyl to kill every man, woman, and child in the entire United States of America. Had they not been there to seize that fentanyl, there's no telling how many lives would be lost. What we do know is this. This past year, we did see a record number of people in the United States lose their life because of fentanyl, the precursors of which are made in China and then shipped to Mexico, and the cartels lace it onto drugs that are then sold into the United States. Last year alone in Texas, we had almost 1,700 people who lost their lives because of fentanyl overdoses. By mere accident, just one pill is enough to kill them. More than 4 people a day in Texas are losing their lives because of it. In the United States of America, the leading cause of death of people between the ages of 18 and 45 is not COVID or cancer or car wrecks or anything like that. The leading cause of death in the United States of people in that age group is fentanyl. This is a crisis. And the only people who are really stepping up and doing anything about that crisis are the people surrounding me right now and their peers. Is Texas law enforcement that's stepping up, dealing with the crisis of fentanyl, trying their best to get it off our streets. And it's time the Biden administration take this serious and step up and secure the border and nothing else to stop the fentanyl. And while I'm talking about it, I got to remind everybody here, hopefully getting out to everybody within this viewing area, about the deadly rainbow fentanyl the cartels are bringing across the border that looks like candy, but it's laced with deadly fentanyl that some kids may take and consume and lose their life because of it. Well, one thing that we did to try to fight back against these deadly cartels is I issued an executive order and a declaration that these cartels are terrorist organizations, and we intend to put them out of business. We will work in collaboration with local law enforcement as well as federal law enforcement to identify and seize any assets that either these cartels or their American side gangs have. We want them to understand if they're doing business in Texas, they picked the wrong state to do business in. They can take their business elsewhere, but we will track down their money, their homes, their boats, their cars, whatever assets they have, and put them out of business. One thing Texas recognizes is even though we've done more than ever before, we cannot do this alone. We know that it's the men and women who are on the front line, who are the tip of the spear in responding to the challenges on the border and the chaos on the border caused by the Biden administration. And that's exactly why the state legislature provided funding for local sheriffs. So sheriffs would be able to use the resources that would help them respond to the challenges they're facing in their community because of the open border policies. And to some extent, that's the same for all sheriffs. To some extent, different sheriffs need different tools and strategies. Our job as a state is to help those local law enforcement officers, our sheriffs, to have the tools they need to do their job to keep their community safe from the chaos caused by Joe Biden's open border policies. Bottom line is that we together collaborate to try to corral this open border crisis. But it's important that I emphasize this. We should not be doing this. This is not in the book that says that it's local sheriffs that should be doing this, or even a state that should be doing this. It's actually in the United States Constitution that says it's the federal government's responsibility to take care of this issue. We're big enough to step up and respond to it. But the federal government needs to get under control its assigned duty under the Constitution, and that is to secure the border. We're not going to wait on them. While they get in line to do their job, we in Texas will continue to step up and keep our state, our counties, and our communities as safe as possible. And that is possible only because of this bipartisan working relationship, where we together will make sure that we do everything we can to keep our community safe. Now I want to turn it over to your local sheriff, and that is Sheriff Hooper.
Hey, thank you, Governor, and thank you for being here. And today was a beautiful day because we got to sit around, if only for a short time, and share some intelligence, share some stories, and share some reality with the governor. And the governor mentioned that 2.5 years ago, the border was a different place. Well, I'm here to tell you that 2.5 years ago, Nueces County was a different place. 2.5 years ago, there were only 3 fentanyl-related deaths in Nueces County. 1 year ago, that year, there were 17 fentanyl-related overdoses, poisonings here in Nueces County. And just last year, there were 31. I spoke with the medical examiner this morning, and we're on a pace to beat that again this year. It's real. Nueces County, at least as long as I've been sheriff, when we looked at the poison pipeline headed for the distribution center that is Houston, Texas, Nueces County was just a pass-through. Nueces County was just 30 miles on Highway 77 where the human trafficking and the drug trafficking occurred. But now it's hitting us right between the eyes. It's hitting home with our young people. And we don't see an end in sight. Something has to be done at that border. And it's not just out in public. I was telling the governor that my most recent death inside my jail, and every sheriff in here, their biggest heartache, the reason they wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning is because of their county jail. And now we're seeing fentanyl inside the county jails, and it comes in as easily as sprinkling some liquefied fentanyl on paper. And it's extremely difficult to detect. And so now we're spending money on technology to try to address that issue. But fentanyl is everywhere, and it starts at the border. And I greatly appreciate everything you and my fellow sheriffs have done, especially with the collaborations and the coalitions like the Operation Lone Star operation. We're working hard on it, and we'd like the public to know that, but it's got to be fixed, and it needs to be fixed by the governmental agency that's responsible for it, and that's the that's the United States government. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Sheriff. Now, Sheriff Ray Delbosky.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, all law enforcement chiefs, officials. I want to say one thing. Not only has Governor Abbott been pushing to secure the border, but also has been constantly searching for resources for rural counties like mine, like Zapata County. He has provided us with resources, equipment that has helped us and empowered us to continue doing our job. Governor Greg Abbott stepped up to the plate when no one did. He has heard the voice of the small rural counties, like I said. These communities have been unheard and unseen for many years. He's visited our counties around the border to try to help us, and is helping us and listening to our concerns. This thanks to the governor because he did not hesitate to provide the help. He's never hesitated to take a phone call or listen to our concerns and listen to the people. Governor Abbott is here to help us and all the Texas border sheriffs to keep Texas safe. It is not a red issue. It is not a blue issue. It's a red, white, and blue issue. And we're all Americans. We all took an oath as sheriffs and law enforcement. And it only happens when you have a leader like Greg Abbott. Governor Abbott is that leader with a stern character that not too many people like, but he has kept his word. And he has helped us, the Texas border sheriffs, secure the border. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you. And now Sheriff Roy Boyd.
Thank you, Governor. When I came into office at the beginning of last year, Governor, what we found was Goliad County, a small county of 7,400 people, was being overrun by cartel members and their operatives who were using property without the permission of the landowners to stash illegal aliens, strip stolen vehicles, and to conduct criminal activity. In the small jurisdictions where we only have 1 to 2 deputies working at any given time, this is an overwhelming task. We were in constant pursuits. We were monitoring 16 different known stash sites inside of Goliad County, and we were doing everything we could to keep up with the demands that have been brought on us as a result of Biden's open border policies. We were drowning. We were drowning in work, and we could not keep up until Governor Abbott stepped up and provided us with Operation Lone Star funding. That funding gave us the personnel, gave us the overtime, gave us the equipment to be able to go out and proactively fight the cartels and their operatives right in our jurisdictions. So we took that funding you gave us, Governor. We formed Operation Lone Star Task Force. We have 20 local law enforcement agencies. We're taking the money that you have entrusted to us to do the job that needs to be done because the federal government will not do it. And we are working together in a collaborative. And the men and women you see in this room are part of that. And they are working very hard. And as a result, and you and I have spoken about this before, we have changed the way that the cartels are operating. We've identified 4 major trafficking organizations. We've gone after 2 different cartels, and we're dismantling their operations right here in South Texas. We're working together thanks to your funding. Without your leadership and the funding that you have provided us, none of this would be possible. And the constitutional rights of the citizens of our communities would still be violated as a direct result of the federal government's lack of willingness to do their own job. And so we thank you because it's only because of you that people can freely utilize their property in Goliad County without fear of the cartel being in the brush or coming to their house. It's only because of Operation Lone Star, and that's because of your leadership, because without it, there's no way it would be happening, and we'd still be drowning. You threw us the lifeline that helped keep us from drowning in what we were facing. Thank you, Governor, and we appreciate it.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Well, thank everybody for being with us here today. I'm joined today by Director McCraw of the Texas Department of Public Safety, Chief Nim Kidd, the Chief of the Texas Division of Emergency Management, as well as the Adjutant General for the National Guard here in Texas, General Seltzer. We just concluded a meeting in another region along the border where we met with more than 24 local officials who represent either cities or counties on the border. And I got to tell you, they are angry and upset about all of the catastrophes caused by the Biden open border policies, and they are urgently asking for action, obviously from the state of Texas, but they know that it's the Biden administration that caused this open border problem, and they expect the Biden administration to step up and respond and to fix the open border problem that they caused. So the Biden administration's open border policies have led to a record number of illegal immigrants crossing the border into the United States. Barack Obama's own Secretary of Homeland Security said that by any measure, having 100,000 people cross the border in 1 month would be a crisis. Now, the Department of Homeland Security is saying that with the end of the Title 42 expulsions beginning in May, the federal government is planning for up to 18,000 illegal immigrants crossing per day. That's more than 500,000 illegal immigrants crossing the border every single month from more than 150 different countries across the globe. That's far beyond what Homeland Security Secretary Johnson said was a crisis. It is unprecedented and it's dangerous. We have potentially more people who will be crossing our border illegally by the end of this year than live in Los Angeles, America's second largest city. With the Biden administration ending Title 42 expulsions in May, Texas will be taking its own unprecedented actions this month to do what no state in America has ever done in the history of this country to better secure our state as well as our nation. Some of what we will be doing will be announced here today. Other parts of what we will be doing will be announced next week. Today, to put all of this in context, it was just March of last year that we began Operation Lone Star to respond to the disaster that existed at that particular moment in time. To respond to that with the help and support of the Texas legislature, I deployed 10,000 National Guard and DPS troopers to the southern border. They have apprehended more than 200,000 migrants so far. They've arrested more than 11,000, including cartel members, drug smugglers, and cop killers. And of course, they have seized more fentanyl that is enough to kill every man, woman, and child in Texas. And Texas, unlike any state in the history of our country, we have already begun to build our own border wall, securing our state and securing our country. But with the ending of Title 42 expulsions, more must be done. Today, I'm announcing a series of new strategies that will be added on to Operation Lone Star to curtail the flow of drug cartel smuggling and migrants and drugs. The first involves inspections. A zero-tolerance policy for unsafe vehicles for smuggling migrants across the border is being implemented immediately. Cartels use vehicles, many of them dangerous commercial trucks, to smuggle immigrants, deadly fentanyl, and other illegal cargo into Texas and onto our roadways. Effective immediately, the Texas Department of Public Safety will conduct enhanced safety inspections of vehicles as they cross the international points of entry into Texas. Now, I know in advance this is going to dramatically slow traffic from Mexico into Texas. It is a byproduct of cartels crossing the border from Mexico into Texas. And at this time, I'm going to sign my directive to Colonel McCraw, the Director of the Texas Department of Public Safety. To get that project underway immediately for the zero tolerance and the inspections that will be taking place. Second, to help local officials whose communities are being overwhelmed by hordes of illegal immigrants who are being dropped off by the Biden administration, Texas is providing charter buses to send these illegal immigrants who have been dropped off by the Biden administration to Washington, D.C. We are sending them to the United States Capitol, where the Biden administration will be able to more immediately address the needs of the people that they are allowing to come across our border. To get that going, I'm going to sign a letter to Chief Nim Kidd with the Texas Division of Emergency Management, who will be in charge of this operation. Together, and to recap on these, what Colonel McCraw is charged to do is, in this letter, I say that I hereby direct the Texas Department of Public Safety to conduct enhanced safety inspections of vehicles as they cross international points of entry into Texas. These inspections should begin to immediately help ensure that Texans are not endangered by unsafe vehicles and their unsafe drivers. And in the letter that I provided to Chief Nim Kidd concerning the transportation by bus of migrants to Washington, D.C., I say, I hereby direct the Texas Division of Emergency Management to begin coordinating the transportation of illegal aliens to Washington, D.C. Now, those two strategies are, in addition to announcing the following actions to further deter illegal immigrants, including deploying boat blockades at appropriate regions in the Rio Grande River, deploying razor wire at low water crossings and high traffic areas, creating container blockades to drive people away from low water crossings. And additionally, the National Guard will begin its first phase of mass migration rehearsals tomorrow to begin the preparation for what we are anticipating to be a potential mass influx of people coming across the border. All troopers and specially trained National Guard will be equipped with riot gear in case of potential caravan violence, like what we have all seen occur in Mexico as the caravans were making their way toward the United States. And then on top of that, the border region is going to be lit during night in prominent smuggling areas to make it far easier to detect any activity that is taking place. Now, as I said before, this is stage one of a two-part process, at least two-part process. There will be more announcements that will come next week. Over the course between today and next week, Texas will continue to evaluate the threats that are posed by the Biden administration's open border policies and announce additional actions next week to respond to these unprecedented illegal border crossings. At this time, I will turn it over to Director Steve McCraw of the Texas Department of Public Safety.
Thank you, Governor. Well, Governor, we're going to be in operations at your direction at 4 p.m. today.
Excellent.
We've got 28 roadway locations that cross into Texas, and we're prepared to launch operations in each of those locations.
Thank you.
Right, sir. Commercial vehicles, trucking industry is vital to our economy, and it's vital to our way of life. And the majority of operators and owners comply with regulations that relates to safety regulations. And that's vitally important because of their impact on Texas roadways and impact on Texas lives. The cartels could care less about that. They don't care about lives. They don't care about how many people they poison. They don't care how many people they kill. They care not. And they're not afraid of violating, and they have and will continue to do so, motor vehicle carrier laws, commercial vehicle enforcement laws. And we've seen it most recently, and in fact, it's been increasing, Governor, the amount of smuggling we've seen, the use of commercial vehicles that have come over, 62 people crammed into a tanker, or another 82 into a truck along those lines. And obviously, the vehicles are unsafe themselves, but they're even more unsafe because they're carrying people at the time. And the cartels have made it very clear to these drivers, you don't give up to police. You immediately try to flee from the police. You get these things called bailouts, where the driver leaves and the vehicle continues on. And it risks the lives of not only the people that are on board, but also the community. And these continue to happen. Now, in Texas, we have over 285,000 registered commercial vehicles. And Customs and Border Protection reports that they receive across those 28 roadways we talked about, 4.8 million commercial vehicles a year that enter Texas. That's an important point to note because as we've been informed by our DHS counterparts, they're projecting that these numbers are going to vastly increase. That of course, as a result of that, the elimination of Title 42, they're expecting numbers that are so high that they've, and we're already at the record high for Texas history right now in terms of apprehensions. And in anticipation of that, we expect the cartels to do as they've done before when Border Patrol is taken off the line, is fully exploit that, including not between the ports of entry, but at the ports of entry, Governor. So here's an opportunity, based on your leadership, to be proactive, to do what we can to deter, unsafe commercial vehicles onto our roadways. And as we've mentioned, we began operations at 4 p.m. today.
Thank you. One of the concerns that was raised today by local officials is a concern that we've heard repeatedly, and that's the concern that Colonel McCraw raised about bailouts. This will address those bailouts, so it will not completely solve them, but it should go to reduce the number of bailouts that we are experiencing here in the Lone Star State. Next is the Adjutant General, General Seltzer.
Thank you, Governor. As you've alluded to, due to the impending elimination of Title 42, the Texas Military Department, in collaboration with our partners at DPS, will be conducting mass migration response rehearsals at multiple locations along the Texas southern border. These iterative rehearsals will commence tomorrow in 5 locations and continue well into May. We will practice employing maritime, engineering, and civil disturbance capabilities along varied avenues of approach to Texas. For the maritime portion of this, as the Governor said, we are employing boats with DPS and Texas Parks and Wildlife to form a blockade on the river to keep people from crossing into Texas. For engineering capabilities, we'll be prepared to hastily put out concertina wire and produce concertina holding areas for anybody who should decide to attempt to cross into Texas. And then lastly, our civil disturbance capabilities will be in full force to have a non-lethal means of blocking people from entering the state. So if you're a caravan organizer and you think you're going to overwhelm or overrun a port of entry, we'll be there waiting for you. If you live in or along the southern border of Texas, you can anticipate to see increased military activity in the RGV along the Ansel Duas Bridge area, Eagle Pass, Del Rio, Laredo, and Zapata. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you. Next is the Chief of the Texas Division of Emergency Management, Nim Kidd.
Thank you, Governor. Our team has already begun communication with our local officials to identify pickup location points. Resources have been ordered, and we'll be ready to implement our part of this plan tomorrow morning.
Great. Thank you. Any questions?
Governor,
Go ahead.
Can we talk about the resources allocated to local officials? I'm sure that you've heard from the mayor in McAllen, and we've had issues with capacity once migrants are released into the cities, and we have run out of shelter at least over the summer. Are resources going to be allocated to address that?
So in part, in response to what the state is doing concerning addressing border-related issues, there has been funding that has been made available to some local officials. One thing that we are making available, I think you mentioned the mayor of McAllen, is that right? One thing that we are making available to the mayor of McAllen, as opposed to McAllen having to shoulder the burden and cost of dealing with the incredibly large number of migrants that the Biden administration is basically just leaving there in McAllen. Texas is now offering the process of being able to deploy and move all those migrants by bus to Washington, D.C.
Governor,
Thank you.
The inspection points, what will that look like? How close to ports of entry will they be? And from a constitutional standpoint, why is it legal?
I'll answer the second question, and I'll let the Colonel answer both questions. Listen, for the way that the Texas Department of Public Safety will go about this process, they have been through all the legal issues before. It will be happening in the state of Texas, not on the international boundary. So that this is occurring on Texas property, on Texas roadways, which the Texas Department of Public Safety is authorized by law to conduct inspections exactly like what they will be doing. They will conduct them in a way that will ensure that there will be no constitutional issues that can validly be raised against it. Of course, everyone always files a lawsuit. We wouldn't be surprised by a lawsuit, but we know that the process that will be used by the Texas Department of Public Safety will be upheld by the law. As it concerns exactly where they're located, how they will be conducted, that would be more appropriate to be answered by Colonel McCraw.
Yes, sir. Well, first, they're not going to be on federal property. They won't be on the bridges where the Office of Field Operation operates. Where we've not even asked for permission to be able to operate there. It's going to be in Texas, and we already do this at these bridges anyway. We conduct safety checks, so we're really expanding it. And although we only do a small percentage right now, it's very important, especially in lieu of how many is coming across, how many came across in 2021, and the activity that we're seeing in terms of how they're being used for smuggling. But importantly, not just smuggling, because the purpose of a safety inspection is just that. It's the safety of that vehicle and the safety of that driver. So it's our job, when we talk about commercial vehicle enforcement, is to ensure that every commercial vehicle that comes across an international bridge and onto Texas roadways is safe, and the driver is safe as well. If it's not, we'll put them out of service.
As far as the notification, how will that happen from DPS to the truckers?
As we do anytime they come off the bridge, we will direct that. They'll have plenty of forewarning in terms of what's happening, and we'll communicate that to them clearly. We'll use signage, but more importantly, we'll have troopers on the ground to be able to direct them.
Is this going to be every vehicle coming into the state of Texas?
We're going to ensure every commercial vehicle that enters the state of Texas is safe.
And how do you have sort of probable cause?
We don't need probable cause to do safety commercial vehicle enforcement inspections, and that's what we're doing. It's not a subterfuge to locate crime. It's simply to make sure that those vehicles are safe when they enter Texas.
I just want to make sure that's
Yeah.
clear.
Yeah.
I also want to bring up the fact that Operation Lone Star is getting an additional $531 million. I guess we could speak to, is this something that we can see funded? And we're talking about these operations, both from DPS as well as the Texas Department of Emergency Management. Is there funding to make this happen consistently?
To achieve what we're talking about right now requires no additional funding right now. Obviously, as you're pointing out an issue that was raised in hearings earlier this week, and that's the reality, and that is securing the border does not come cheap. Securing the border would cost Texas nothing if the federal government was doing its job, but because Joe Biden is not securing the border, the state of Texas is having to step up and spend Texas taxpayer money doing the federal government's job. Texans have the backbone and the will to secure a border, two things that Joe Biden does not have.
All right, next outlet. Yeah.
Regarding the charter buses, how many are we talking? When is it set to begin? And again, can you clarify, you're talking about migrants who are like mass released from the federal government into Texas towns that don't have the infrastructure for it. You're going to put them on charter buses and take them to D.C.?
I'm going to answer the latter part and let Chief Kidd answer the first part. Yes, so the Biden administration, as we speak,
with the current numbers, even before the elimination of Title 42, they've been dumping large numbers of migrants in cities up and down the border, leaving the cities to grapple with challenges they don't have the capability of dealing with. They themselves have been putting these migrants on buses to San Antonio. So I said, I got a better idea. As opposed to busing these people to San Antonio, let's continue the ride all the way to Washington, D.C.
How can you do that?
Hold on a second. He gets to respond to the first part of the question.
Thank you. The first part of the question, the long answer is, in past disasters, we have pulled up to 900 buses for operations to do evacuations. We will use as many buses as we need to follow the governor's direction to get this done.
Two more questions.
Is there a place in D.C. that you all are planning to send these migrants to? Is there a designated area you guys have in this plan?
The first location will be the steps of the United States Capitol.
All right, last question.
Governor, there was reports today that you would declare an invasion and deputize National Guard and state troopers. You didn't mention that today. Is that something that you have planned to do in order to send migrants back across the border?
Well, first I got to tell you, you got to question your sources because apparently they're not good. But secondly, what I'll tell you, largely speaking, and that is, as I pointed out earlier, there will be more announcements next week where Texas is evaluating every tool that we can possibly use to make sure that we are doing everything we can to secure the border, period.
All right, thank you guys so much.
Thank you all for being with us. Today, okay. All right. Today is an historic day where two governors are showing how to lead on border issues. I'm joined by Nuevo Leon Governor Garcia. 2 days ago, we spoke on the telephone about the challenges on the border ranging from clogged bridges to human smuggling. Today, we met to reach an agreement on solutions to those challenges. Border bridges have become clogged because of a policy by Texas to thoroughly inspect vehicles coming from Mexico, whether it be Nuevo Leon or the other states. These inspections revealed about 25% of the vehicles crossing into Texas were unsafe for Texas roads and were removed from service. At the same time, Texas has been overrun with a record number of illegal immigrants crossing from Mexico into Texas with the assistance of cartels. Well, Governor Garcia and I have reached an agreement today that addresses all of these issues. Governor Garcia has begun and will continue enhanced border security enforcement measures on the Nuevo Leon side of the border, both at ports of entry and alongside the Rio Grande River, to prevent illegal immigration from Nuevo Leon into Texas. That increase in border security on the Nuevo Leon side will continue going forward. And since Nuevo Leon has increased its security on its side of the border, the Texas Department of Public Safety can return to its previous practice of random searches of vehicles crossing the bridge from Nuevo Leon. The effect of this will be that the bridge from Nuevo Leon and Texas will return to normal, effective immediately, right now. It will remain that way as long as Nuevo Leon executes this historic agreement. My office and the Texas Secretary of State have also been contacted about border issues by all Mexican governors whose states are connected to Texas by bridge. That includes the governors of Tamaulipas, Coahuila, and Chihuahua, as well as my office and the Texas Secretary of State have been contacted by the Chief Officer for the North American Unit at the Mexican Secretariat of Foreign Affairs. I look forward to working with all of them toward achieving results similar to what we are achieving today with Governor Garcia. Until, however, those agreements are reached with those states, the Texas Department of Public Safety will continue to thoroughly inspect vehicles entering into the United States from every Mexican state except Nuevo Leon. Now listen, I understand the concerns that businesses have trying to move products across the border. But I also know well the frustration of my fellow Texans and my fellow Americans caused by the Biden administration not securing our border. The ultimate way to end the clogged border is for President Biden to do his job and to secure the border. If you want relief from the clogged border, you need to call President Biden and tell him to maintain the Title 42 expulsion policy that has been in place for years. You need to tell President Biden to aggressively enforce the Remain in Mexico policy. You need to call your member of Congress and insist that they hold the Biden administration accountable. And you need to demand that President Biden enforce the immigration laws that have already been passed by the United States Congress. You also need to contact President Lopez Obrador and urge him to collaborate with Texas to end the influx of cartel activity from Mexico into Texas. Clogged bridges can end only through the type of collaboration that we are demonstrating today between Texas and Nuevo Leon. The fact of the matter is the Biden administration has abandoned the immigration laws of America. And because of that, President Biden has fueled the flow of illegal immigration. He knows that cartels profit off of every person entering our country illegally. He knows that the illegal immigration that he has fostered leads to kids being raped, some losing their lives. He knows that Americans are dying every day because of the fentanyl that he allows to be smuggled into the United States. There are very real and very deadly consequences for Biden's refusal to secure the border. Texas law enforcement is responding to that inaction by the Biden administration. Texas law enforcement is apprehending illegal immigrants that got away from the Border Patrol, including previously convicted murderers, previously convicted child rapists, kidnappers, drug traffickers, MS-13 gang members, and cartel gang members. And also, all law enforcement together, they have seized enough fentanyl that's come across the border sufficient to kill every man, woman, and child in the entire United States of America. Texas is apprehending people crossing our border illegally from countries like China, Iran, Russia, Iraq, and more than 150 additional countries from across the globe. It's time for the Biden administration to stop it. The true fix for the clogged borders begins with the White House. President Biden must assert the national security priority that comes with being the commander-in-chief of the United States. Until then, Texas will use its own strategies to secure the border and continue to negotiate with Mexico to seek solutions. And I thank Governor Garcia for working collaboratively with me on this project. And now I would like to turn the presentation over to Governor Garcia, Governor of Nuevo Leon.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon for everyone in Texas and the U.S. and obviously in Nuevo Leon, Mexico. We are very happy to be here because for us, the Texas alliance we're building, it's very important. First of all, I have to thank Texas to allow us the cross-border vaccination process that has already vaccinated 250,000 children. We're the only state in Mexico that had already vaccinated our youth. On Monday, we came to the border to start a new highway. We are starting many highways in Nuevo Leon to connect even more with Texas and with TEMEC improve the goods and services we import and export. On that day, obviously, the entrepreneurs and the transports from Nuevo Leon talked to me to do something to increase again the revisions, the checkpoints going on the border. And minutes after I had a call with Governor Greg Abbott, I told him the situation and that we wanted to help from both sides to secure, because security is a key issue of both countries. And that's why I'm very happy to make history, because today, 2 states, and I think the most important states of our countries, are making a memorandum of understanding that we have to help both sides to have a border with much more security. And that's why in Nuevo León, yesterday, we began a series of checkpoints on our border, in our river, to make sure our Governor Greg Abbott that they will not have any trouble with Nuevo León. Our 14-kilometer border with Texas will be continuously patrolled by our police, that indeed is the best local police in Mexico. And we want to make sure that Texas feels comfortable making business with Nuevo León, and that together we can have a lot more business growing, nearshoring, and continue commerce. I would like to take an advantage to let U.S. and obviously Texas into consideration that Nuevo León is planning to have the best port of entry of Mexico, here in Colombia. And to accomplish that, we have to start now with security, with highways, and with a connection with the U.S., with obviously with Texas, to start even more stronger ally. So I thank Greg Abbott. I really wish my neighbors can join this memorandum of understanding. And also, and I would like to conclude by telling that Nuevo León is very happy to strengthen this economy region, because I'm very sure that in a few years, this northeast region of Mexico with Texas will improve in commerce and be a very important region economically for the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you. At this time, we will sign the agreements. One is in English, another is in Spanish.
I will sign the Spanish one.
Oh.
Okay, so this is the English one.
This is the agreement that Nuevo León and Texas have now entered, an agreement of cooperation for both security as well as for getting these ports open and doing business like they are accustomed to doing. With that, we'll be happy to take a few questions. Go ahead.
What would you say to your critics that say the policy that you put forward last week was a publicity stunt that blew up in your face, and now you got it double back?
So the goal all along has been to ensure that people understood the consequences of an open border, and that Texas isn't going to tolerate it anymore. And we knew that as soon as we did what we did on the border, that we would be contacted by officials in Mexico, because it is a very high price to pay with regard to what is going on the border. And sometimes it just takes action like that to spur people sitting down and working things out like the way that they are beginning to work out. And it led to today by us making history, by two governors sitting down. Think about what I'm about to tell you. We've spent something like 15 months under the Biden administration. Not once has Joe Biden been down to the border. Not once has he sat down to try to hammer out an agreement like this. Today, myself and the governor from Nuevo Leon, we're doing something the President of the United States could have done long ago, but he does not do it. It's going to be governors leading the way through programs like this to make sure that we will be able to make our countries and our states safe. And I look forward to working with the other governors who have bridges that coming into Texas, where hopefully we can reach similar agreements.
What do you say to business owners, Governor, and consumers who say they have directly been hit by your efforts to make a point? It sort of refutes the message that we've all heard before, that Texas is open for business and that Texas is friendly to Texans and to Texas consumers.
Well, first, for the Texas business, report just came out showing that Texas has the strongest, the best, the number one gross domestic product of any state in the United States. Under my leadership, Texas has been ranked the number one state for business in the United States, and Texas has received the Governor's Cup for the number one state for economic development. The people in Texas who may have suffered some hardship because it took a few extra hours to get something across the port, those are the very same Texans who agree overwhelmingly that we as a state and we as a people have suffered substantially from the open border policies of the Biden administration. The same people who have suffered a few hours of delay, they have been shouting for the past 15 months to the Biden administration, do not open those borders. They've been demanding the Biden administration keep the Title 42 expulsions into place. They've been demanding that the Biden come up and show up, not for a photo op, but to show up and hear the complaints from the people in Del Rio. I'll tell you what, I've been to Del Rio. I've been up and down the entire border. I know exactly what the consumers along those borders are saying. They're saying they need the border secured. That is their top priority.
Next outlet. Governor, how would you respond to taxpayers who are upset that their money is going toward giving migrants a free ride to D.C.? And do you have plans to perhaps fly more than migrants out of the Texas border, including in Walmart?
There's one thing that's perfectly clear, and that is the Biden administration and a lot of leaders in Congress have no idea about the chaos they have caused by their open border policies. And they refuse to come down and see firsthand and talk to the people who are really most adversely affected. And if they're not going to come to the border, I'm going to take the border to them in Washington, D.C. They experienced early this morning exactly what communities in Texas experience every single day, where the Biden administration is dropping off large groups of illegal immigrants from countries across the entire globe, leaving those local communities to have to grapple with it. And we had the first bus load arrive in Washington, D.C. today. There will be more that will be arriving, whether by bus or plane, so that Washington is going to have to respond and deal with the same challenges that we're dealing with.
Governor Abbott, DPS has not publicly reported any drug seizures or immigrant apprehensions as a result of the truck safety inspections at the bridges. Have there been any, and if not, are those inspections having the desired effect?
I would have to refer you to the Texas Department of Public Safety with regard to what, if anything, they've apprehended. Here's the only thing that I do know, and that is that they're inspecting every vehicle, and almost 25% of all vehicles had to be put out of operation because of lack of safety of those vehicles, whether it be because of brake issues, because of tire issues, or other issues. There may be Texans whose lives were saved because of the vehicles taken out of operation by what the Texas Department of Public Safety did, because otherwise those dangerous vehicles with dangerous brakes could have run into a Texan walking across the road or driving down a road. So I applaud the Texas for Public Safety living up to what they stand for, public safety.
Sí.
Claro. I will do it in English because we arranged to make this in English, and in the afternoon I will do it in Monterrey, Nuevo León in Spanish. Well, this is a memorandum of understanding that Nuevo León is going to compromise to improve its security, and I want to ensure that Texas feels comfortable making business and having an effective and quicker border. Because Nuevo León in Columbia Bridge, we usually made 10 or 20 minutes for crossing. In the last days, we had 5 or 6 hours. All our fresh foods, vegetables, they were going to spoil, and obviously expenses were 2 or 3 times bigger. So if Nuevo León can assure security, technology, security checkpoints, and patrol the border to help Texas, and Texas can help us with more merchandise, with more commerce, we will do it. Because Nuevo León is first place in everything. In employment, we're first place in taxes, first place in formality, we are the motor engine of Mexico, and we are also first place in foreign investment. And most of it is because of TEMEC and commerce. So that's why we're willing to make an effort to patrol all the 14 kilometers we have with Texas, to be an example for other states in Mexico that they can resolve the problems and don't wait for other governments to enter to solve them. And that's why Nuevo León today signs this memo. It's a very clear memo on what we are compromising, and that's what we came here, Laredo, to do today.
Governor, can you tell us a little bit about how you will check up on Nuevo León, that they are, holding their end, and if you could tell me what other Mexican officials reached out to you about this problem?
Sure. So already, before we entered into this agreement today, I want to make sure that Nuevo León both had a plan and was executing that plan. And so the state of Texas, through the Texas Department of Public Safety, already began to check up on Nuevo León. The report I received last night from Steve McCraw, the director of the Texas Department of Public Safety, said that they observed no activity crossing the river whatsoever during the time span that they observed it. And they observed increased personnel, and they weren't able to identify exactly if they were law enforcement or what they were, but clearly they were officials with the state of Nuevo León who were ensuring safety standards and practices at the official port of entry. So whether it be the port of entry or along the border, we've already seen through multiple videos exactly the safety measures that Nuevo León has already put in place that was articulated by Governor Garcia. Oh, sure. So I've been contacted by every governor from every state that has a bridge crossing into Texas. And I think those meetings will begin as soon as tomorrow, in addition to one national level official who reached out and wanted to talk about what could be done to resolve this problem.
And based on those conversations, do you think the same agreement's going to be done, or is there someone or a state that,
So those are in the initial stages of the conversations, and we have basically just agreed to talk. And I can tell them right now, if they will live up to the same commitment that has been shown by Governor Garcia, and we will be able to quickly achieve a deal and an agreement that will make sure that their ports will be open swifter, but also the border will be more secure.
And speaking of the migrants you won't be sent to D.C., do you know exactly how many made it today and how many we can expect maybe in the week?
So I can't tell you how many will be forthcoming. Information like that will be released only after people reach their ultimate destination. But I think the number was 24 that arrived today.
Sorry, next outlet.
Gobernador García, ¿algún comentario sobre sus impresiones en español sobre la firma de este convenio, por favor?
Pues muy contento ya empezaron a verse los camiones moverse. Inclusive ahorita me decía un mensaje que van más rápido de como estaban antes de esta medida que tomó el gobierno de Texas. Entonces estoy muy contento porque si esto va a mejorar y hacer más fácil y rápido el cruce, importación y exportación de mercancía tejana a Nuevo León o neolonesa a Texas, yo me doy por servido.
Governor, will the standards be the same on the Mexican side of Nuevo León as they are here by DPS, and how would you monitor that, the inspection standards, sir?
So listen, Mexico as a country, Nuevo León, have their own standards that would be different from. They may be different. They may be identical to DPS standards. I wouldn't know, but we obviously observe what's going on and are able to determine whether or not high level standards that DPS expects to be lived up to are being satisfied. And Director McCraw has indicated to me that he's satisfied with the standards and practices that are being used by Nuevo León.
What is the reaction to the,
Go ahead.
What is the reaction to the Ag Commissioner's criticism of the new border policies and about how much is that going to cost right now with the increased security?
Well, one thing that's clear, and that is he had no clue what we were doing and about the negotiations that we had ongoing with regard to officials in Mexico. So he was just completely uninformed.
Two more questions.
It sounds like you got two problems: the immigration problem and the 25% of the vehicles that are crossing over and possibly killing people. What are you doing about the 25% of those vehicles?
The Texas Department of Public Safety takes that extremely serious, and they will always use whatever strategies are necessary to make sure that our roads remain safe.
What are they doing right now?
Well, I can let Director McCraw answer that because he's the one responsible for it.
They're put out of service. They don't go anywhere until they're fixed.
So you're towing them right up
They're told they can stay there, but they don't leave until they've remedied those defections that constitute a significant threat to the public.
All right, last question. But Governor, just a follow-up clarity question. Will the Mexican government be checking will Mexican officials be checking every single vehicle? And if so, what does that do to fix the slowdown in traffic that we're seeing?
Well, we already began on Monday. In Monday, we installed some checkpoints, security checkpoints, on our Codefront is the name of our institution. And obviously, we're trying to get some agreements, for example, to double check, but only with one instance. We already do some pilots on Nuevo León for crossing and have one revision only. So this is the first step for maybe another ones to improve the revisions, the checkpoints. But nowadays, since Monday, we already started the checkpoints. We show Governor Abbott, we have federal police, migration police, local state police making those checkpoints to assure that they will arrive safe and not representing any threat to Texans.
Thank y'all very much.